Okay, I've got 6 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. One thing before we do, this meeting is open to the public for listening, and for the public that are interested to get to that site to listen to this meeting is on the Cabarrus County Schools website under district headlines. It has BOE to meet Monday. So you click on that link, there will be a link to a YouTube audio only that you can listen for this meeting, which is also recorded. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Monday, March 23rd, 2020, Cabarrus County Board of Education budget work session. And we're only going to talk about the budget for next year. However, due to the situation that's going on with the coronavirus, our board members wanted an update, and especially after the governor announced that they will be extending the closing through May 15th. And how that impacts our school system. So I've added that to the agenda. So if I can get a motion and then a second by some of my board members that are on the call, please say your name first before making the motion to the second, so we can record that.
Cindy, make the motion.
Okay, we have Cindy, Holly, second. Okay, all in favor of adopting our agenda for tonight, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? David on the other phone, did he hear us? All right, so we'll take that as unanimous to move forward with our agenda. And as I mentioned, the first agenda item here is the COVID-19 update, and I would like to hand that over to our superintendent to give us an update, please.
Okay, we'll just try to do an overview, and I guess if you guys have specific questions, we'll try to answer those. So obviously when we kind of went in last week, what we tried to, the first priority really was feeding students. We kind of jumped in there. Again, just want to say how much we appreciate what everybody's done in that area. Jumped in and started working each day, adding sites just about every day, including some that began today when we've gotten feedback on that. So again, the school nutrition departments jumped in great. Mr. LeGrand, they've all done that. So that almost didn't miss a beat when we picked that up on Tuesday. We were in good shape, kind of a carryover from summer feeding, even though there's a little bit of variation to that. Next was to try to work with teachers and how to start working on that. Obviously, Dr. Hill and our directors have led that initiative where we had some required teacher work days last week where we're doing some of the same stuff that we're doing here. And then tomorrow we begin deploying devices across our schools tomorrow during the day and Wednesday during the day. And then it looks like we're probably going to add another day on Thursday, which we'll announce tomorrow, because some people had some feedback about doing it in the evening. So we'll start working on that tomorrow. Let's see. Lots of questions, I think, about hourly employees and salaried employees. And who has to come to work. And so we tried to provide opportunities for people to come to work. Hourly employees have to sign in and sign out right now, although we're certainly looking for guidance from the state if we have any flexibility with that, which we hope we get. At this point, we do not. So we're providing work opportunities for anybody that wants to do that. And lots of them have been doing that, even including assigning different assignments. In other words, a bus driver is obviously not driving a school bus, so we've had some things set up for them if they desire to work. And let's see, just with the safety protocol of that, obviously our maintenance department and facilities done a great job cleaning all the buildings. One bonus of students not being there is the ability to clean the building pretty deeply, which they've been doing pretty much around the clock since we've been back. So that's kind of where we're at. As we said, we're moving forward with trying to get devices to everybody. Internet connection will be a problem there too, because everyone doesn't have the internet. Part of that device deployment is to let some people know about some free opportunities from the internet, which we've been made aware of, and we'll pass that out tomorrow and the next day whenever we're doing it. So again, if there are specific questions, everybody has different areas that we're working on pretty much, again, round the clock with trying to make sure things are in place, and also trying to get updates from the state on what we have flexibility on and what we do not. So that's kind of where we're at, and we'll be glad to talk about anything specific or if I left something out.
Okay. The governor said May 15th, they're holding students out until that. How does that impact us?
I don't think any of us are really surprised. We were just wondering how long that was going to be. So I think Dr. Hill explained to you guys on that Sunday that we kind of have a couple phases of how we deployed this, and part of that is to get devices to people that don't have them. So I would say it just means that now we're out for with the 2 weeks that were the first time, and we're adding 8 weeks to that, so a minimum of 10 weeks. And he said today that we would have some follow-up on what that means exactly, because we have lots of questions again that usually pertain to employees, students, and I guess at some point he'll make a call whether we come back after May 15th. So we'll announce that, probably do a Connect Ed tomorrow night, and also do a little bit of an update on our devices deployment. But again, I think Dr. Hill shared with you the phases of that, which they've worked with teachers on in the curriculum department. Gets a little bit deeper as you go further on, but obviously we have to make sure people have a way to connect before we do that.
Dr. Louder.
Comments? Go ahead. Comments from our board members?
Dr. Louder, no one has said whether it will be makeup time or if they're going to forgive that time. In other words, they haven't said whether we'll have to go on through the summertime or if they're just going to forgive the time, correct?
They have pretty much said that testing is going to be waived. I think President Trump said that, and we had some follow-up from that from the state school board. But no, they have not announced the calendar, because I think they're probably waiting to decide, do we come back May 15th or not. So no, we have not had anything specific, except obviously there's going to be calendar flexibility. They've kind of telegraphed that it's coming, but as far as specifics, no.
Thank you.
Holly, do you have anything?
If I can unmute this thing, I do. So I have a question regarding the Chromebooks. Dr. Lauer, do all the students that need it get it, and are they compatible where they're getting online? I've gotten several emails and text messages about, I don't know if they're trying to get on with their own laptops and not being able to get online. They're not. Is everything? Do we know that all those Chromebooks and everything is compatible so that they're able to get online?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean with compatible, but yes, I mean, at the end of the day, what happens, all of our teachers pretty much call their students to find out at the end of last week, that was one of the things that they worked on with teachers, to find out, do you have internet access? Do you have a device? We were using the numbers from that to ultimately determine how many we thought would come. Not sure if more people are going to come tomorrow and pick that up. But as far as should they be able to take the device, and if they have the internet at home, log on, yes, and there are some instructions involved. Mr. LeGrand or Dr. Hill, we're working on that with helping people log on that may have not done that before. So looks like Ms. Furtenbaugh saying she can comment on that, but yeah, that's part of the rollout.
Yes.
So,
okay. Cindy, can I finish my questions before you get started, please? That way I'll get mine all out of the way. Can you just give me 1 minute? So my thought is, what about the families that don't have transportation to come pick up like hard copies? Do we have, I mean, if we're handing out Chromebooks, that's great. If they have internet, that works. But if they're having to pick up hard copies and they don't have transportation, do we have any way to get that information out there to those kids that fit in that category?
Yeah, some of the principals were working with some of our district leaders today on what exactly, and what we were trying to do was get out a deployment in this first 2 or 3 rounds to say what's out there, and then start working on answers for who's left for that. So I know they're working on, for example, McKinney-Vento students and how that may work, but also they may know a student says I can't come to school, or a parent may let them know, and then they're going to work on some plans, but we're trying to get out the bulk of that first and then start working on individual hardships, if that makes sense.
Okay, and then I know that Spectrum, I think I heard, was offering free internet for a while, but of course that may not start immediately. But can we get that kind of information on the website? And you may have alluded to that when you were starting your comments, and I just didn't catch all of it. But can we make sure that we get that on the website? Any resources that would help parents with that type of service immediately?
Yeah, if that's not on there, we can make that part of the announcement. I know it's part of what they're handing out. And for example, my daughter's in high school. We got a Connect Ed from the high school today that had a lot of information, and one of those was schools. Here's the number to call if you don't have internet. It's Spectrum. So that's getting out there, but we'll figure out some kind of way to post that.
Okay, and just last question. So I know a Zoom is used a lot. You know, would that be a process that we can, as far as making it a daily structural style? Will it be a daily structural style? How do you keep up with what kids are doing with what? Is it just they're turning their information in, or is it they're online and you know how long they're online? How are we keeping up with it, since it's going to be a very varied situation family to family?
So that's the biggest part of Dr. Hill's phases, to be quite honest, is because you can't really start assigning things, and then, as you said, may not have a device, may not have internet access. Well, now if I'm 12 assignments behind, and you're going to get zeros on all of them, or what? So part of this rollout is to make sure teachers understand and students understand when we're moving further out into how we're going to actually teach and what we can hold people accountable for, depending on the access they have. So honestly, that's the most difficult part. If everybody had access and everybody had a device, then we could start much quicker. But as we roll it out, it's to try to get to a place where we can begin and then therefore say we have an expectation, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Cindy, I'm done.
Okay, I was just going to comment. I had asked some questions over the last couple of days, and the students who need a device will be getting a device that is applicable to their grade level. So I believe that very early grades are getting their iPads. That's what they use at school. EC might be getting iPads, and Crystal or Chris, you can tell me if that's wrong, but the kids who are used to using Chromebooks will get that, and I think there's maybe some high school kids who will get laptops.
There's a little bit of a number issue with K1 and 2 that uses iPads. So what they're trying to do now is give out Chromebooks first, with some information and some help with lower grades that haven't used that as much, but it really gets down to numbers and handing out iPads and all the stuff with that. So right now we're trying to just do Chromebooks and then looking at individual devices that you can't do what we're already doing on. So a little bit of a learning curve with younger students, but really gets down to more about the number of devices, and because there's obviously a whole lot less iPads than we can use or that compared to Chromebooks.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I think that kind of said on there, that Crystal's answering a little bit about that in the comments, that a limited number of EC students. So again, just to give you an example of an autistic student whose iPad is, or that device or something similar is in their IEP, would be something that maybe they would have an iPad for, but it would be driven by that, if that makes sense. And that would not be the norm, that would be the exception.
Okay, and I just have one more question regarding that, and this may be drilling down really deep, but do we know all these kids and families know how to operate Chromebooks? I mean, I know that's a simple question, but I think it's really important that they be familiar or able to actually work with the Chromebook.
Yeah, most of them do. Some of the younger kids don't, but that's part of what maybe even some of their instruction is going to be, is their directions are going to come with a device for parents to help them and then to do some of the activities that they do. 2 through 12 uses Chromebooks every day, but K1 is the ones that don't, and there's a little bit of a learning curve that's going to have some of their quote learning is going to be exposure to a Chromebook, if that makes sense.
I see Mr. LeGrand answered that and says that they will be distributing instructions with those. That is perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Cindy, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Rob.
Hey, Barry, do you have anything?
No, Dr. Louder, I don't have anything regarding the students, but we've talked at length about our non-certified employees. I didn't know if you wanted to kind of just reiterate where we are with that, and the fact that that this is a statewide law that is in effect, and that's why we have to have our non-certified people come in and work on the premises rather than being able to be at home like some people who are able to telework.
Yeah, in very general terms, so we had an update today from the vice chair of the state school board and the governor, and they were both asked that question. And neither answered specifically, but what they kind of said was really answered what we're doing, which is that everybody have the opportunity to work, and that hourly employees do have to come in and clock in to be able to be paid. I think where some of the confusion has been is some districts' teaching assistants are hourly like ours. Most are hourly like ours. Some actually are not hourly employees, and so therefore they're able to work from home in a way that an hourly employee is not. So right now, all the guidance that we're getting from the state is that an hourly employee has to clock in and out to get paid. There may be some flexibility that has changed with the new federal law that actually was passed passed at the end of last week, and obviously it looks like we may get a stimulus package this week, which has some unemployment and some employment parts of it. Any of that changes, then we will certainly roll that out to our employees. But right now, don't have much flexibility there, or don't have any flexibility there if you're an hourly employee. But we have some conference calls with HR, finance for the state level that we hope to get some guidance for. And if we have flexibility, we will certainly provide that for our employees.
Thank you for that update, Chris. Dr. Louder. Yeah, I just think it's really important that our employees understand we really are trying to do the best we can for them, and to make sure that everyone is at the end of the day gets a paycheck. And I know you and the whole team are working to try to make sure that they're as whole as they can get. So thank you again for all you're doing and behind the scenes.
And just to add to that, so every call that we have with the state superintendent, we've had calls with the state school board, we've had a call with all superintendents on with the state superintendent. Everybody's number one question is about hourly employees. And so I sent a couple emails today to quite a few people to find out about guidance on the new federal law. So I know people are frustrated with that and sometimes a little confused on where it is, but it is the number one question with every superintendent that I speak to and the entire group, looking for more guidance and more flexibility. So if we have any of that, we will certainly extend it to our employees.
So, Dr. Louder, I heard you just that last bit that y'all are going to make sure you get that information out to the employees. Is that what you said?
Yeah, as soon as it changes. So right now there hasn't anything changed, but if we have, like I said, we're working on that with every superintendent that I'm aware of, every state guidance call, that's what we're asking for. And as soon as the rule changes and there's, hey, you can let this person work this way remotely, use some form that we're not using, then that'll be the first thing we roll out to employees.
But I mean, has that information, the initial information that you just gave to us, has that been sent out to them? I think that would detour the emails and the questions if they understood just exactly what you just said to us.
Yeah, so as soon as we roll the information out, then all employees get and always get, whether it's a snow day or an event like this, an email from finance. So Kelly Klutz sends them an all employees email. It has every category and classification. They've gotten that with everything that we've rolled out. I'm not sure that they always like that necessarily, but the information is there, and anything that would change from what Kelly's already sent out, then we'll send it out as soon as we can.
Okay, Lauren,
Hey. No, I'm good. I think everybody's kind of asked a lot of the questions that I had, so I'm okay for now.
Thanks. David, on the other phone?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think Dr. Louder has it under control as best as he can from the state's direction so far.
Okay, thank you. I had just a few questions. You said earlier that testing was waived. What does that mean for our school? Kids don't have to take end of grade tests. Is that what it meant?
Yes, so some testing requirements are from the federal government. As a general rule, the state writes a plan that the federal government has to accept. And so pretty quickly, I guess it was the end of last week, or maybe over the weekend, I can't remember, but President Trump basically came out and said federal requirements are going to be waived. So now the state has to send in a waiver, supposed to be approved within a day. I think they were kind of advertising. And what we've heard from the state is that they're going to apply for that waiver, which means the EOGs and the EOCs, which are all given now, would not be given this school year, is our understanding now. Officially, that hasn't been approved, but it was certainly given out like that's a done deal for all states and it looks like we'll be applying for that waiver.
But don't test scores result, or at least have an impact on bonuses and those type of things?
Yeah, so those are all the questions that, right now the growth part is a part of how principals get paid. It's bonuses for teachers. All of that are the questions that many of us have that they have not released guidance on yet, but currently it looks like they will not be given, or certainly not held accountable for any of those for this school year.
Okay, my next question had to do, the last time we talked about this 2-week plan that we had on our website for students to use, and that was not graded work. Moving forward, since we're out, I guess till May 15th, what is our plan moving forward as far as educating kids and getting grades, that type of thing? Maybe Crystal would be better to answer some of that.
Well, I can see, and Ms. Highsmith also sent a question, so I don't know if I can answer very generally if you want more details, but again, it goes back to what Dr. Hill rolled out for you guys at that meeting, is that there are really kind of levels to this, meaning like it is very difficult to give an assignment today and say, hey, you're getting an A, a B, and an F if every kid doesn't have a device. And then once they have a device, do they have internet access? And so each step of that is trying to roll it out and then see, well, what can you hold people accountable for, if anything, if they don't have access to it? And so that really is our biggest barrier. That gets a little deeper the further we go. But right now, the next big step is to deploy devices who don't have them at home.
Okay, thank you for that. And the last question had to do with, this top of a lot of people's minds is, what about our seniors? We're out till May 15th. Well, graduation for the early college is May 16th. And then our other students will graduate June 12th and 13th. What can we tell those parents and those students?
So just one other thing, I know Ms. Highsmith sent in about IB and AP testing is canceled. That is what we're hearing so far. I'm not sure that we've gotten formal. There's been some guidance from IB and I think some from AP now. It looks like that those tests are not going to be available too. So she's correct, but I'm not sure we have a definitive statement yet. Next, as far as graduation, the answer to that is we don't know until we get there. So if we get to May 10th and the governor cancels school for the rest of the year, obviously there's probably not going to be graduation. So I guess now when he made the statement today, he's kind of hoping that we'll be up and ready to go on the 15th. And then we all have a million questions of, is everything pass fail? How do you work, even if we're in for 4 weeks, when you miss 10 in a row, again, back to that, well, what can you hold people accountable for? Very difficult where we're at. So we will all wait for specific guidance on that, with the understanding that we may not be back in school. And obviously if we're not, we may not have, we certainly wouldn't have graduation ceremonies. So for now, I think we don't know. We'll have to wait and see if we come back to school. I know today one of our neighboring states, Virginia, canceled school for the rest of the year. So that's certainly something that could still happen, and we'll wait depending on the guidance. If we come back up on May the 18th, then I think that's what everybody's question is how do we start from here, and are we going to have large public gatherings, or will there still be discouraged? Obviously, we have 5,000 people at graduation ceremonies, so even if we come back up, that still may be something that the CDC is not recommending. So all those things will come into account depending on what the country and this virus looks like on May the 15th.
We've got students that are planning on going to college in the fall. They don't even know if they're going to graduate. So that's kind of, I'm getting emails on that as well. So if we can have something to at least share, I'd like to see that out there on our website somewhere. Okay, any other further questions from our board? And we did have on our last meeting, we said we would discuss an emergency powers resolution for the superintendent. That is up there on the board docs if you've had an opportunity to get on the board docs. And Brian Shaw, you on the call, maybe you can give us an overview of that.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear me, Rob?
I can hear you.
Great. As we talked about in the meeting last Sunday, several boards of education had approved emergency powers resolutions to authorize the superintendent to take sort of immediate emergency actions as required. Originally, those first few resolutions were specifically limited to the actual health and safety, and the later versions of those have also dealt with financial, personnel, etc. The North Carolina School Boards Association sent out a proposed policy, I think it was Wednesday, and to every school district in the state, saying this is something that boards might want to consider. And I think that policy is on your board docs with modified to include the name of the Cabarrus County Schools, etc. So that's something for the board to consider, does not have to approve it. If the board's interested in approving it, certainly one suggestion I would make, the policy provided by the School Boards Association would be adopted by majority vote, but could only be rescinded or extended by a 2/3 majority vote. And that doesn't seem to make sense to me. I would think that if the board adopts such a resolution, then at any time the board should be able to rescind it or modify it or extend it by a majority vote as well. So that is one recommendation I would make, again, if the board wants to do it. There are several other aspects that could be considered, but I think before getting into those, the main issue would be, is the board interested in such an emergency powers resolution, or does the board not have an interest in that?
Okay, Chris, you want to have anything to say before we ask now the board members comment?
Yeah, we did have, just today, I mean, obviously this is up to you guys, but we just today came up, so here's an example. We have numerous board policies that tie people to their EOCs and EOGs. So you would just want to be able to say that I could say they don't have to do that, rather than we come up on May 15th and then start finding out different rules like, oh, well, there are 22 policies that refer to that, and you guys are supposed to meet, one day before graduation. So I think that there's going to be a lot of things that fall like that, just because this is going to be so different, whether we come back in or not. So that was the one that came up today as a really good example of just something that, it would take board action to say, well, now this board policy says you got to follow this, instead of just saying, well, hey, I can waive that. So I don't know if you have other specific questions. That's just probably the easiest answer. And Brian can give some better examples of where that may cause us some issues, depending on when we come back up. I guess I would also say that most of the districts around us have voted for that, I think for the reason that we just said. But again, Brian can speak to that.
Brian, anything else to add?
This is Brian. I think that's a very good example, and different school districts are working through all these various steps, and it's not obvious. It may not be obvious today what might be obvious tomorrow, or a question that rises. And so the resolution again would give the superintendent authority to waive board policy. The board would have to be informed of that, and at any time the board could come in and revise or take different action, but the superintendent would have authority unless that were set aside by the board. The other thing to mention there is that the superintendent, of course, would not have authority to violate or disregard any state or federal law. We'd only be talking about Board of Education policies and addressing policies that might make a lot of sense in normal circumstance but are restrictive now.
Okay, we'll open it up to the board members. Carolyn?
Well, in these extreme circumstances now, I can see where this may be necessary. And my thing is, if we would do it, I would like to have it where, just what Brian had said, that if, we approve it, where it would have a clause or whatever in it that if exceptions were made, that the superintendent advise us of what he did, give us a report or something that, hey, yeah, I had to do this, and, you know, his reasoning for it and everything, but give him that authority to do it. And, like I say, these are just all uncertain times. None of us expected this, but I see where this is necessary. And like I say, but you know, I would say we could do this, but like I say, for him just to let us know what he did and everything. So I feel like this is necessary. And
okay, thank you. Cindy?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I agree with what Carolyn said. I agree with doing this resolution. I want to make it clear, though, that the resolution only gives the extension of power to the superintendent, not to designees, as we have in policy. So ultimately, Dr. Louder has the final decision. Certainly, a senior staff member can come forward and say, I need an exception on something, but ultimately, Dr. Louder needs to make that decision.
Holly?
So I agree with Carolyn's remarks and with Cindy's that I think it is definitely unprecedented times, and I'm sure it would be hard for us to all convene at the many numerous times that it would take to make different things happen. But I agree also that I would like to make sure there's a process in place that when those board policies are superseded by the superintendent, that we get a report for that. And I also agree with Cindy that it would just be Dr. Louder and no designees at this point in time, because that would be, I think, a difficult process to keep up with in itself. But just that we definitely get the report and that it is extended only to Dr. Louder.
Thank you. Laura?
I completely agree. We had talked about it a little bit the last time, and bringing this up as a potential thing that we would have to vote on. And I've been thinking about it all week, and I really think that this is the only logical decision that we have in order for Dr. Louder to keep things going and changing as quickly as he needs to.
Okay, thank you. Barry?
Well, everyone has expressed their feelings, and I am of the same, so let's vote for it and get this moved on.
Okay, let's let David have his input if he has any. David? Still on the phone over there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
We are talking about the emergency powers resolution.
We are.
I think a date of May 15th ought to be added to the now therefore be resolved clause. Instead of temporary, we should specify a end date of the resolution of May 15th.
Okay, did everybody hear that? David would like an end date of May 15th added to the resolution.
This is Cindy. I think we need to let it be open-ended. We will have the opportunity to do a virtual meeting again if we need to, because if the governor changes something or the Department of Public Instruction changes something, we don't want to hog-tie the superintendent if we have some action in process.
David, did you hear Cindy's comment?
I did not.
Yeah, she said this is essentially it's still an ongoing issue. It may go beyond the 15th, and we don't want to hand tie it expiring at that point.
We would update the resolution at that time.
Okay, David's comment is we can update the resolution at that time. All right, so my only question on this thing is the superintendent keep us informed ahead of time if practical.
I think ahead of time when practical, but that may not always be practical. So, I mean, I agree that we all need to get a report on what maybe he used the extended powers for, but I think we need to keep it flexible within reason.
Okay, well, we've had discussion. If anyone wants to make a motion on this, please do put your name first.
Rob, this is Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
Sorry to interrupt that. I just want to point out that the resolution, as it reads, provides the authority to the superintendent, does not include any languages to designee. And I think it's pretty clear from the discussion today that it's not going to be a designee, it's going to be the superintendent. Also, as to the reporting, the language says that the superintendent is directed to keep the Board of Education informed of any actions taken under this emergency authority as soon as is practicable in light of the circumstances. So I think that's pretty reasonable language, that he'll do it as soon as is practical, reasonable, but that depends on facts we don't know. I think it's good language. And again, the only thing I would want the board to really consider is whether it should the board should be able to set it aside by majority vote, or whether it will require a 2/3 majority vote as specified in the resolution right now.
Did everybody hear Brian's comment? Any feedback on that?
Mr. Chairman, this is Cindy. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution to grant emergency powers to the superintendent with an amendment to, let me find the clause, to the clause second from the bottom where it says now be it further resolved, unless otherwise rescinded or extended by the board upon a 2/3 majority, that we change that to a simple majority.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that.
Second by Laura. So motion by Cindy, second by Laura. I guess how do we vote? How do we vote here with everyone? No, I guess if we get a no, we'll have to do a name vote. But all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we do have a unanimous vote on that one. That motion passes. Okay, well, thank you for that time that dedicated to this important issue. We're going to move on to the budget presentation, which was the main reason for that meeting initially. So 4.01 says budget updates. Kelly Kletzen, you are here, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hey, Rob, if I could I know Ms. Highsmith asked about AP and IB. So officially IB is canceled. AP is not canceled. The College Board will provide updates on April 3rd. So I appreciate her question and Dr. Hill clarifying that. So IB has been canceled. College Board will give an update on April 3rd. Just wanted to make sure the information was right. Sorry.
Thank you for clarifying. I think that's important information. All right, we all good to have Kelly go through her presentation?
Good afternoon. I have just shared my screen with you. Rob, could you turn yours down a little bit? Thank you. I've shared my screen with you and hope you can see the PowerPoint. It is loaded on Board Docs in case. Okay, we're good? All right, awesome. All right, thank you for joining our budget session tonight. Starting with the second slide, we did a budget presentation on Monday, March the 2nd, where we reviewed the budget process and capital outlay and our capital improvement projects. Today was originally scheduled for Thursday, March the 26th, but the board changed that date until today, Monday, March the 23rd. So today we'll be reviewing operational expansion for technology, facilities and maintenance, and general education. Then we will go on to our continuation expenses, and then we'll do a quick review of our budget objectives. On our business meeting, our work session meeting in April, on April the 6th, we will do the public hearing for budget, and then we will address and answer any questions that you had that maybe we couldn't answer today or from the first meeting. On Monday, April the 20th, we will look for the board to adopt a proposed budget resolution or a proposed budget. And what that does is just allows us to submit our budget to the county as a request. Okay. So the first category we're going to start with is operational expansion for technology this evening. And thank you in advance for your patience. If you have questions and there are logistics, there may be a moment of delay as we'll coordinate that communication, so just hang with us just for a little bit. We have some staff here and some staff remote, so we'll just work through that. I have 2 displays, one for questions and one for the presentation, so thank you for your patience. So for operational expansion technology, the first request, and you can see the request and the rank. You can also see the points there, and that represents the TRIGO prioritization, and then the amount. So the total request here is $958,000, starting with an increase in operational budget, software budget. And just due to the way that we are structured today, I am going to take you over to the justification documents so that we can look at those briefly as we discuss each item. So this request is an increase in operational software, and you can see here in the project description that we are requesting funding for Orchid, Mozile, Microsoft Incident IQ, and LobbyGuard. You can see more information about that here in the body of the justification. You can see that there have been significant increases over the last couple of years, which is driving this request. Okay, I'm going to switch back over to the PowerPoint presentation. And the second request in this area is a break-fix technician. We're asking for 1 break-fix technician at $68,000. And we're going to flip over to that budget justification. Here it is. You can see the request for the technician. You can see all of the years that we've requested the technician and how many of those that we've requested, whether they were funded or not funded. And you can see the description and the ideal situation or the preferred situation to reduce. We currently have 3 to 4 sites, or a tech covers 3 to 4 sites, trying to get that number down so that the techs cover less schools. Okay. The third item is increase in technology instructional budget for $200,000. And we will go to the justification. Right, when is it? Here we go. This is the request for repairs and replacement parts. Am I on the right one? I'm sorry. Give me 1 minute. Instructional budget. Let me get the right justification for you. Yeah, this is the right one. So this was the school's request for additional dollars to be passed down to the school level to help them cover replacement for repairs for their devices. Because anything outside of warranty, the technology department only covers the labor, and the schools have to take care of the parts. And so the schools are asking for additional dollars to come down into their school budget to help them replace the devices that need repair. Okay, and finally in this category is the lease increase for devices, and it looks like Ms. Furtenbaugh has a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kelly, I just wanted to share some information from our budget committee meeting, and that was the reason that the technology software rose to the top is that Dane has to pay those additional licensing fees. If we don't request that additional money and get it, then he has to take money from another part of the technology budget. So I think we'd all like to keep the money allocated where it is currently and kind of not rob Peter to pay Paul. We're really not set up for when vendors change their licensing and billing methods. So we have to cover it to keep the business going.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to flip back over to the lease increase for devices. And so this is just a request to increase the amount of money that we have in the budget annually so that we can do a 4-year lease. And eventually we would like to be on a replacement cycle of every 4 years for all of our devices. We're still quite a ways away from that right now, but this request of $500,000 would go a long way to help us. And we have a question from Mr. Shoemaker. Does it effectively provide approximately $5,000 per school for repairs? So it's going to be different for the small schools. We would typically do that by ADM, average daily membership. So of course your large schools are going to get more and your small schools will get less, but if you took the amount and divided it by 40, then yes, that's the average. Do we have any other questions in this area? Okay, we'll move on to the next area, and that is our operational expansion for facilities and maintenance. Okay, we have 4 requests here. The first request being facilities and ground sustainment maintenance, and I'll flip over to the justifications for those. Okay, so the request before you is $1.3 million. And you can see we're asking for reoccurring funds for the facilities and grounds maintenance, comply with state regulations and necessary maintenance. Down in the body of this, under background and justification, you can see some examples of the things that these dollars would be used for. Over the last couple of years, Ms. Dubois and I and Chuck's team looked at our needs and our work orders and tried to figure out how much we would need to get us to a point where we were whole. And we worked together on this request. The amount ended up being $1.3 million. Mr. Blah and I talked multiple times, and obviously the intent was to help us get to the $1.3 million, knowing that it would never happen in 1 year, but identifying the amount that we truly need to be whole. Okay. The next request is for utility tax. We're asking for 3 of those for $168,000. Then, okay. We've got a question from Mr. Shoemaker. How many generators do we need versus how many are covered in this request? Mr. Shoemaker, that's something that I will ask Mr. Taylor, and we will get that information for you. Okay. So there's the 1.3, and here are the utility tax. I'm going to open this up just a little bit more so you can see it better. Thank you. So our budget request, the way that it's situated is there's 3 utility tax. You can see each of the 4 years that we've requested them before, if they were funded, not funded, or partially funded. And you can see down here in the background and justification what we would be using these folks for. And I'll just try to hit the highlights here in his request. It's really for the routine preventative maintenance, which they have PMs for. and that includes the HVAC, refrigeration, kitchen, etc. They have approximately 11,000 pieces of equipment to maintain, and so we don't want to avoid any warranties or anything on our new schools or new equipment purchase, so we have to do those PMs. During the year last year, facilities generated 24,000 PMs, and we're only able to complete 14,000. They just simply do not have the manpower to complete the number of PMs that we have. So that's why we're requesting these positions. Okay. The next item is our painting crew, asking for 1 lead painter and 2 regular painting positions for a total of $322,000. And we'll flip over to that justification document. Okay, here's our painting crew justification. Funding will allow us to take $8.8 million off of our funding request in our capital projects. So those could be removed, and we could anticipate with this funding painting about 5 schools, interior and exterior, each year. So in addition to doing the 5 schools, we would be able to maintain painting in the kitchens due to health inspection deficiencies. So we're requesting these positions, and also $50,000 worth of equipment to get them started. Okay. The final request in this area is our Stormwater Technicians. One of those at $60,000. Okay, here's the request. Again, you can see the last 5 years that they were requested, or 5 previous to this year. Mostly not funded, but back in 15-16 we did get some funding for this area, due to the increase in the number of stormwater ponds that we have, and that we're currently maintaining and having issues with. And then every time we add a new school, we add new ponds, and therefore have to be maintained and taken care of. Okay, let's stop here or pause here just for a moment and ask for questions in this area. So, Mr. Shoemaker, to clarify your question, we've talked to Chuck, and this request is not to purchase generators, but is to perform operational tests and service on them. And we have about 35 generators. It looks like Mr. Shoemaker's typing, so I'll give it just a second. So Mr. Shoemaker's asking, yes, sir, how many generators are being serviced with this request? And so we will get someone on staff to contact Chuck, and we will try to get that answer for you. Okay. Are there any other questions on this area? We will get the answer from Chuck and come back to that. Okay. Moving on. Oops. Okay, now we're going to move on to operational expansion, general education. Okay. Again, these are in priority order according to the Trigo Budget Committee. So the first request is to increase teacher supplements to 10%. Currently, the district is at 9% in this fiscal year. The request is to go to 10%. That would cost $1.5 million, a little more than that. And I'm going to take you over to the justification document now. Okay, and I'm going to increase the size so we can see a little bit better. Okay, and as you can see, the previous year's request and also the project description and justification for that. We talked at length about this in the budget committee meeting, lots of great discussion. Again, we are at 9%. We would like to at least offer a minimum of 12%. Locally paid supplements can be the distinguishing advantage between the recruitment and for recruitment and retention. Sorry. You can see here below we've listed some other districts that we compete against or with or are similar size and what their ranges or their supplements are currently. Now this request, we've asked for an increase from 9% to 10%. The current conversations with the county are very similar to what they were last year in that we plan to partner with the county, and the county would provide the 0.5% and the school district would provide the other 0.5% to meet the request for the 10%. Clearly those decisions have not been made yet, but those are discussions on the table right now. Do we have questions about this request? Okay. The next request is increased restorative behavior support specialists. 4 of those at $54,000, a total of $216,000. These are non-certified positions, and I'm going to pull that justification document for you. I'm sorry, these aren't in order. It must be last. Here we are. You can see that this is the first year we've asked for these type positions. And so the description reads to increase the restorative behavior support specialists, formerly known as BMTs, to provide boots on the ground and support for students with intense behavior interventions. And then you can read more about the need here in the background and justification. Okay, go back to the list. The third request is specialized instructional support personnel, SIPs, that we've referred to them for the last several years. The request is for 12, and that is $1,080,000 for that request. And here we are. Oops. So your SIS positions, we've asked for them for the 4 previous years and this current year. Operational expansion for 12 of those positions. These positions could be school counselors, psychologists, or social workers. And those positions are to address student needs and remove barriers to academic success for over 34,000 students. And again, you can see the justification, the background for that request. Okay. The next number, the fourth request is increased teacher allotments. We'd like to have one of those at each of the schools, and that includes benefits for a request of $2.9 million. Okay, here's your teacher allotment request. For the past 5 years minimum, we've made this request, providing an additional teaching allotment, one per school, to reduce the 4th through 12th grade class sizes, and or to provide a strategic teacher staffing based on school needs as it relates to the school improvement goals. Go to the next request is an increase in our exceptional children teachers, requesting 5 of those at $400,000. So the description talks about the caseload that we have in the district as compared to where we would like for that to be. An increase in the EC teachers would positively impact the teaching and learning for our most at-risk students and reduce the number of split positions, which negatively impact our EC teacher recruitment and retention. Okay. The next one, number 6, is instructional digital learning subscriptions. There it is. So the request is for $150,000. We would like to increase the instructional digital learning subscription to allow for district-wide purchases, including but not limited to Mastery Connect, Rise Kids, Gizmos, Use ELA, and Desmos calculator, items like that. Seventh is increase our dean positions. We're asking for 5 of those for, sorry, I lost my place, for $450,000. Okay, one more. Oops. Let me go up. Okay. These dean positions, the request is to add 5 deans at the middle and high schools due to student population growth. A dean position functions the same as a 10-month assistant principal, handling discipline, teacher observations, evaluations, supervisory duties, and many, many other responsibilities. So with the increased enrollment at each of the school, workload and demands on the current administrators prevent them from functioning as instructional leaders. Primary goal in our schools, having this person to help with disciplinary and supervisory will help make administrators more available to parents and teachers. At present, principals' time is filled with basic management tasks, making it difficult to attend PLC meetings, parent conferences, coach teachers, and interact with stakeholders in a meaningful way. Next is district level MTSS coaches. 2 of those is the request. Okay. So in 2 recent years, we have made this request. The goal of this project is to create a district level support system for a continued implementation of the multi-tiered system of support by installing 2 district level MTSS coaches. They would focus on their expertise between elementary and secondary support. They would support schools with attending MTSS meetings such as data teams and involving problem-solving meetings at the school level to offer coaching and support. It would allow us as a district to be very consistent in our training and implementation efforts, as these coaches would be able to take info back to the school teams from the district and state input sessions. Okay. The 9th request is adding assistant coach position supplements. That was at the top. There it is. Okay, you can see here this would be 2 supplements at each of the high schools. So the average supplement will be 1,948. So 2 of those at each school, and the total request is $31,000. You can see back in 16-17 and 17-18 we had similar requests. This addition of the 2 assistant coaching positions for each of the 8 high schools, this is paid in the form of a supplement, preferably an existing certified staff member. That doesn't always happen, but that's always the goal. Each high school has a different area of need for additional coaches. 2 flex positions per school would allow the principal and the athletic director to assign these positions where needed in order to properly instruct and supervise teams with high participation numbers. Assignment of these positions would have to have the CCS athletic department approval. Total cost of this request is based on a level 6 coaching experience rating. Okay. Request number 10 is increase in school support above their allotment. So the request is for clerical, custodial, those type positions, and asking for 10 of those at 63. So it's $630,000 is the request. Okay. To add school support in the form of clerical, custodial, testing coordinator, etc., additional funds will be allocated to schools using the current allotment method. The request is to add the equivalent of 10 positions district-wide. And you can see here at the bottom their justification. They need custodial hours, assistance with online learning through NC Virtual, Career and College Promise, students in credit recovery. Additional hours for clerical would allow the schools to hire additional staff to handle registration, enrollment, testing schedules, Spanish translation, etc. And finally, in this category, mentor stipends, $100 per beginning teacher, for a total of $42,000. We have to be close. Okay, that final justification. Provide a mentor stipend of $100 per year for beginning teacher. Currently, mentors receive 2 flex days for serving as a mentor. Often mentors earn so much flex time that they're unable to use the additional days. And years ago, I can't remember exactly how many years, but years ago we used to have dollars from the state for mentor pay, and that was cut when some time ago when the budgets were all cut. Okay. So we'll start with questions. Mr. Shoemaker has a question, and he wants to know typically how much of the operational expansion do we anticipate receiving. Last year, for example, we were able to get the 0.5% for teacher supplement. So the first ranking request, we were able to get a portion of that. So in expansion, that's generally where we land. Other questions in this area? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. And so this is our continuation items, and these are the items that we are going to have to pay to continue to operate, and we really won't get anything more than we currently have. So it's just to continue to operate, and we'll go over each one of these. You can see that number in the bottom right-hand corner is a very large number, larger than probably we've ever asked the county for continuation, primarily because of the high school and the elementary school opening this year. So we'll start at the top and go over each of the items. They're in columns entitled Regular Technology, FMD, and Total, because that really helps the county, because this is the way that they allot our funds. So the first one here on the top is the provision to increase locally paid staff to match the state increase. And so we have 64 locally paid teachers. And so if the state says we're going to give teachers a 5% increase, then we'll need the local offset to be able to pay those locally paid teachers the same thing that the state, because the state only gives you money to pay the state teachers. So we want the local to help us with this request. So that's our certified staff. Next is our non-certified staff, our non-teaching staff. So I am anticipating or projecting a 3% increase, the same with the certified. It's really a guess right now as to what the budget will hold, but it's a placeholder, and the county's just really good with us in that they adjust it to actual for us. So again, we've made a projection for our non-certified staff at 3%, and you can see that the amounts, $588,000 total. The next line item is the compression for our non-teaching staff, and so several years ago the board helped by passing this, what we call as compression for our non-teaching staff, where every other year our non-certified get a step that recognizes their experience. It's very similar to what a teacher gets on the state schedule. With every year of experience, the teacher normally gets an increase for experience, and for our non-teaching staff, we've been able to put one in for every other year, which keeps us fairly competitive. And a step is somewhere around 2.5% generally. And the next one is a provision to maintain our supplements at the current percent with the suggested pay increases. So if the state says that teachers are going to get a 5% increase, it's going to take more money to continue to pay them their 9% supplement. And that more money in this situation is $405,000. So even if we don't increase the supplement, just to keep them at the same rate, we need that $405,000. Okay. The next item is the provision to pay the supplement for new teachers. So the state will give us new teachers for growth and for class size adjustment, but the supplement is a local expense. So we have to ask our county to pay the supplement for all the new teachers that we get due to growth and class size adjustments. Next is our provision to increase for employer retirement costs. The current year retirement cost is 19.7%, and we believe it will be 21.44% next budget year. And you have the calculation there. Ms. Furtenbow has a question. Go ahead, Cindy.
Hey, Kelly. On the line that says provision to pay supplement, wait a second here. The supplements with the current percent with suggested pay increases, do you include the money for the increase in retirement contribution there?
I do.
Because somewhere we have to, include that extra 2% on the 9%.
Yes, ma'am, I do. I include the retirement. Yes, I do. And I started saying hospitalization, but there's no hospitalization in that calculation. It's just retirement.
Okay. So the extra supplement for the new teachers or locally paid, but it's really the supplement overall that has that percentage as well.
Can you ask that again?
So, there's some lines there that provision for the supplements for new teachers or for locally paid staff, but in reality, when the employer retirement contribution increases, we have to increase that on the supplement as well.
On everything, yes. And
yes.
I calculate that in when I ask for these amounts.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay. I think we're on the hospitalization line item now. So we are currently at $6,306, and that's the portion that the school system pays for every employee to have medical insurance. And it is projected to be $6,647 in the next fiscal year. And then the next item is the provision to maintain our current per pupil allotment of instructional supply due to growth. So if for every student in our district we were given $107 for instructional supplies, if we increased $777, if we didn't ask for these dollars, we would be going backwards. So we need to ensure that we get our $107 for the 777 students, or our purchasing power would diminish, and that's what this line item helps us avoid. Okay. The next line item is the same type of provision for our technology department, and so if our current per pupil in that department is $167 per pupil, if you add 777 more students, you need to ensure that we do not go backwards. Okay. The last two items are really large numbers, and we've got an extra slide to help with the detail there. So the provision for the new school staff, you can see it as a total. That request is $2.4 million. And then I'm going to just highlight the next one, and then we're going to go over the slides in detail. So the last one on the list is the provision for a new school operating cost, and we'll go over each one of those items. And again, as you can see, the request is $5.9 million, and it's broken down into the different categories of funding. Okay, so now we're going to break down and look at that $2.4 million request for new school staffing. And you can see it's the slide is entitled position and then the count. So the number of positions we're asking the local county to help us with, the individual position cost, and then the total position cost. Then I'm showing the FICA, the retirement and hospitalization costs of each, and then the total local request. So as we look through there, there's only 36 positions requested, and we all know that it will take significantly more staff than that to equip a high school and an elementary school. So this request is only for the local positions that we need help with. So you're seeing positions like an assistant principal. So we have, let's just make easy numbers. We have 33,000 students sitting in our buildings today. We're going to have 33,700 students sitting in our building tomorrow. That the state gives us assistant principals based on ADM or an allotment. So just because we divide those students into 2 more buildings, the state may not give us any more positions. So that's why we have to make a local request. You can see here I'm only asking for 2 assistant principal positions, and will most likely in a high school you normally have 3 assistant principals, and depending on the size of the elementary school you will have 1 or 2. So you can see that I'm not requesting 100% of that staff from local, just the portion that we have to have to make that work. Generally in our assistant principal funding from the state, the ratio is that the state only pays for about 50% of that. So this is pretty common as our current position. The next is clerical. You can see that we were asking for 4. This is a very similar category in which the county generally funds about 50% of this, and the state generally funds about 50% of this. This is one of the categories over the years of budget cuts that the state targeted and was able to cut significantly. Again, the same for the custodial area, about 50-50. So then we get into our certified positions, and so the first one there is a school guidance. Of course, we'll have more school guidance positions in these schools than 1, but we're just asking for the 1 in the local request, because again, think about the number of schools that we have. We have 40 schools today, and the allotment is 40 guidance. You can't just pick up a guidance and take it out of one school and put it in the other. We need we need more school guidance than 1 per school, but we are only asking for 1 in the local request. We'll get some state funding to help with the other. The media position and some of these other positions are unique, like 1 position, as I was mentioning before, in that we have 1 media specialist in every school. So the state's not going to give us more because we divide the schools and make more schools. So we need a media specialist from the local dollars. Similar, the psychologist is similar to the school guidance. Social worker and attendance, very similar. Our ESL, go back to the example where we have X number of ESL teachers, and we have more schools now, so we need at least 1 more position from local to be able to make that work. Same with AIG, alternative learning, and you can see the note here at the bottom for alternative learning. This includes a graduation coach, credit recovery, our Yes Center, and in-school suspension. And you can just see when you open a high school, we need more staff, and it's just very expensive. Continuing to go down, classroom teachers in general. So the same concept, when we divide our students into more buildings and more classrooms, the math doesn't, children don't come in pockets of 25, they don't divide easily. Obviously, we divide based on the zones and the planning. So it just takes more positions to be able to add another school, or 2 more schools. Same thing with the band directors we talked about before, the athletic director. Each school has 1. We're not going to take we can't take one out of our other high schools, so we need to request at least one for each of these schools. Our instructional technology facilitator, same concept. Each school has one. We need two of these, one for the elementary school, one for the high school. Our high school has an internet, is an IB school, so we need a coordinator for that. Then we always ask for a transportation planner, so every high school has a planner for the zones. And then technology break fix, we're asking for two of those positions for the two schools. Okay, so the total there is $2.8 million, but not this current year, but the previous year when we were anticipating to open the schools a year earlier. The county did the early funding where they start the principal early and they start some of our other positions early, and we get that funding. So that needs to be netted and taken off of the amount of requests. So that brings you to $2.4 million of staff. And that was a lot of information. So if you have questions. I think that was from earlier, Rob. Oh, she's typing.
Kelly, this is Cindy. Has the county indicated if the budget process will be affected? You know, we originally thought they were in an optimistic situation for revenues, but now obviously with businesses closing and declined sales tax revenues, that's going to change.
That's a great question. We have not had those those conversations about budget. I know we do have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, a chair vice chair meeting, so maybe those discussions will be had then. But I think we're all putting out COVID fires right now, and we've not had an opportunity to have that conversation.
Yeah, I know it's a bit early in the whole situation, but I think that's important that not only our staff but the community understands things they may be looking for in the budget may not be able to happen.
Sure. Thank you for that. Okay, are there any other questions on this page? Okay. All right, we'll go on to the other slide associated with the new school startup. So we're opening a new high school and an elementary school. We've got to have electric, water, sewer, and trash for both of those schools, and that's a cost of an estimated cost of $380,000. Internet, that is a small number, but I've tracked it separately because that goes into the technology budget, so that helps the county to distinguish that. And then the next two requests is, so our facilities maintenance department operational, so the same kind of concept applies that we talked about instructional supply and technology monies earlier in the day, is that if we currently get revenue of $1.85 per square foot of our facilities, and we add 398,000 more square foot, then unless we're going to go backwards, we need to get $737,000 more dollars to be able to maintain the buildings in the current manner that we're maintaining them. The second line item is for project specific, and so we've made great stride with those projects, and so these are projects that are less than $25,000. So I've broken this out so that it's easy for the county to be able to distinguish between. So if we want to keep that level of maintenance or projects ongoing, we'll need another $72,000 for a total of $810,000. So just on this page, the request is $1.2 million. So we have a question. David's asking, what is the current inflation rate, particularly showing an increase in health care contributions? So David, that rate is given to us from DPI based on previous budgetary information. So that was included in, I believe, the biennium budget. It has multiple years in there, multiple year projections, and DPI is not normally very confident of numbers, but these numbers they were fairly confident of, so I feel good about them. Other questions in this area? Okay. Okay, I just like to highlight charter schools just a little bit, every budget presentation that we do. Just for your knowledge, we're initially funded in July of 2019 for 2,144 students. Our current enrollment, charter school enrollment, the better of the second month ADM is 2,289. Which really means that I need to make a request to the county for that change. In the last couple of years, that's what the county has done. It's our agreement that once we get final second month numbers, then they will make the adjustment, whether that's positive or negative. In the last couple of years, it's been positive. So I will be making that request fairly soon, simply because it's a pass-through. We get the money from the county and we send it directly to the charter schools. And you can see below, our current enrollment is currently 6.8% of the total enrollment, and we'll evaluate every year after the second month has been reported. Okay. So just as part of our budget committee, we do ask for feedback and do a survey, and we just like to share that with you. These are the survey questions that we sent, and this is the response that we received. So scoring 1 out of 5, with 5 being high. So we feel pretty good about our feedback that we get. Okay, and then we always want to do a quick objective review with the board. So we do this also with the budget committee to ensure that they want to continue and can support the budget objectives that we have. We know that our budget objectives really drive what we do and how we prioritize and what's important to us, and it aligns with our strategic plan. So it's extremely important to review our objectives and for everybody to feel good and have buy-in. So these are the budget objectives, the ones that we used this year. Here is the weight, you can see. And then we have another page. It's a little more difficult to see, but it is the definition of each of the objective. As we participate in budget committee, it's hard to stay focused on what the definition is, and they stay consistent. So we try to keep the definitions really close by, and we like to add to them if there's any way that we can make them clearer, more clear, and helpful to the committee. So I'll just take a moment to see if there's any comments from the board members, any requests to change anything in the budget objectives, and I'll move to whichever page you'd like to see. Looks like Ms. Carpenter's typing a question. I'll give her just a moment.
Mine's really not a question, it's more of a comment.
Okay.
it was just in a comment relating to the budget committee, and on the last page, it seems like the budget committee, when you come to the objection, objects and definitions, you know, we really have a lot of discussion on the positive impact on equity. And that one seems like we struggle with that one more than anything. Would you not agree, Kelly?
Yes, ma'am, we do. We struggle with it every year, and we've tried to make it more clear. I know Mr. Harrison sent a suggestion to say to make it fairness rather than equity. Certainly interested in what board members have to say.
And I don't know if fair, I don't know how you put that, but that one, out of everything else, I think we had more discussion on this, on budget this year than anything. I think it went very, very smoothly, and but that one was the biggest question I think we had. I thought everything went very well this year, and thank you for everything that you did, and it went smoother than I think about any of our years, but that one was the biggest question, and thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Do we have any suggestions on changing it or modifying it or increasing the definition or do I need to give the board some time to think about it? And we will convene again in April. We have the TIP meeting in April, and you can certainly make adjustments at that time.
Yeah, Kelly, this is Cindy. I would suggest because the question always comes back to you and Amy Louder.
Mm-hmm.
If the two of you have some thoughts about updating the equitable type description, based on your observations?
We can give it a shot. We can certainly try to expand our definition a little bit better. I know Mr. Harrison did send us some articles, so we can work on that, Ms. Burtonville.
I'm just thinking you guys seem to always have a handle on it and can kind of get us back on track in the budget committee.
Sure, we could take that as a task to ensure that we get done prior to the next budget committee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions in this area? Okay. So as I said, we're going to meet again on April the 6th. This will be the public hearing. The public will have an opportunity to participate, to speak. And then we always leave a placeholder that if the board has any questions or comments or things that we have needed to get back with you on, there's a placeholder for that. We have 2 more questions, okay? All right.
Kelly?
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question regarding not so much about this presentation, but I know at our called meeting you had talked about the benefits of having our fund balance. Do we know when we could expect some type of report on how that's going and what the impact is going to be, or where we're at any point in time?
So we currently are not using any of our fund balance, and so things are obviously very different right now in that just think about we're not running every bus every day. So we're not using all of the labor hours, we're not using all of the gas, we're not using all of the things that we normally do in a normal basis. Now, it is our hope that we're able to pay every staff member and utilize the funds that we have budgeted. But in absence of not having school, not buying toilet paper, not buying supplies, we are not using our fund balance yet. We just wanted the board to know that if there's a situation where we need to, that is available and we can do that. We're in an okay position to do that. But we have not spent any fund balance other than what the board has appropriated in the current budget. And most of that was to help with the teacher supplements, if you recall.
Okay, no, that's great. I probably should have expounded on that just a little bit, I guess, and say how it's impacting our whole budget and if any impact to our fund balance, or just a report in general on how things are going now versus what would be this typical time of the year, or what that looks like. Does that make sense?
Can you help me a little more? I'm not sure.
So if there's anything differently right now that you're having to do, or anything that would be different that we would be doing in our system right now because of the situation that we're going through.
Is there an example that maybe you could provide? I'm not sure that there's anything right now.
Like, are we having to pay out something atypical right now versus what we would be doing at a typical time of the year? Is there anything different that we're doing right now that impacts our budget because of what's going on versus what we would normally be doing? Does that make more sense?
Yeah, there's only one thing that I know of right now. Because we were able to offer jobs to our bus drivers and our child nutrition workers and that are not in their normal function, we have experienced some additional cost in paint and supplies like mulch and things, just so that we could keep those employees employed. They're not significant costs. I think $40,000, I believe, is what it was. We are not at the point where that is fund balance. But it is. It's an unusual expense, and it wasn't anticipated. But we feel like $40,000 is a very small amount to keep our folks employed.
That is a perfect example, and that's what I was talking about. Is there anything that's atypical that we wouldn't have budgeted for last year that would be being impacted this year because it is what we're going through right now?
Gotcha, I understand. That's the only thing that I can put my finger on right now. I really don't know of anything else.
Great, thank you.
My question is, as we've been talking this whole meeting and while we're doing what we're doing, do we, and we're saying we're going to do a public hearing on April the 6th, and then we said we were going to have another meeting on the 20th for the final approval? Could we not push all this out till the 20th and do it all on the 20th, or push this out to do, like say everything on the 20th? And the further we could push it out, the better off we would be. We don't need to be doing it this soon. We all need to be staying in, and that's why we're doing these meetings the way we are right now anyway. But could we not just do all this at the same time?
Ms. Carpenter, the meeting will be a virtual meeting. We're not asking people to come into the building, and so this was more of a trial to ensure that we could do it easily in April. So we will all be remote in April, and we'll be able to have a way for the public to be able to participate. So there's no intention of having a meeting, an on-site meeting.
But still, could we not do it? Push it out all to just one date, though? Can it all not be done on the same day?
The April 6th meeting is your normal meeting, your normal work session meeting. So we're going to have other things that day besides budget.
Oh, okay. On April the 6th? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay, I'm checking for questions. So Barry has a question about unspent money, I think is what we're saying.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question to you, Kelly.
Yes.
Obviously, if we continue on this path, we're going to build up a tremendous amount of favorability in our transportation budget because the buses will not be running the routes that they were running before. Do you think the state is going to require us to give back a certain amount of money based on the mileage that we run for the year?
So we don't know the answer to that. Certainly I'm taking caution to ensure that I can keep the most money that we can in Cabarrus County Schools. Keeping in mind that the state is allowing us wonderful flexibility right now, and they have said, keep your bus drivers employed, keep all of your other folks employed if you possibly can, and they're allowing us to continue to pay them from their original funding source. So while we are building some surplus in some of these budgets, we continue to hope, we are definitely paying the folks that are working out of that budget, and anyone that's taken leave out of that budget. So there won't be a huge surplus, but there very well may be some. But of course, I'm always taking measures to ensure that we keep as much of that in our county as we can. Okay, Ms. Burtonbow has a question.
Yeah, Kelly, just sitting here thinking, through the budget committee process, I really like that idea of having our own painting crew.
Mm-hmm.
Has Mr. Taylor thought about doing any painting during this time?
Oh, great question. Yes, ma'am. We're doing a significant amount of painting. So one of the jobs, or multiple categories of jobs, is for those folks to be able to paint in our schools. So there's as I mentioned with Ms. Blackwelder earlier, Grimsley, I'm so sorry. Earlier is that we did buy, I think, $20,000 worth of paint and supplies so that we could paint the schools. But yes, that is a positive coming out of this.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to pause a minute for more questions, and if I missed a question on the screen, just please let me know. Okay, well, that's all I have for you today.
Thank you very much for the detailed presentation. And it does, it's really our list of needs and how we prioritize those needs as of today. Come budget time, with what's going on, it's very likely to be a whole lot different what the county can fund for us. Any further comments from our board members before we ask for a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say I'm so proud of our team, the staff and the board members, for how well this worked tonight. So thank you to Dane for your assistance in getting it set up, and for everybody else who helped make this happen.
Thank you for those comments. I think we all agree with that. Anybody else?
I would like to say the same thing, Dane and all the staff. And Dr. Ladder, y'all have done an outstanding job in these very, very trying times, and just keep up the good work. We really, I know myself and I know the community really appreciates it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Ms. Furtenbaugh.
Second that.
Second by
Carolyn Carpenter.
Okay, second by Caroline. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? That passes unanimously. We are in adjournment, and again, our next meeting will be similar style here, electronic, via the web and via YouTube. Thank you for your participation and joining us tonight.
Thank you all.